What's YouTube, here's another compilation video while I get myself together for my next one. This time we'll be running through the Gunvolt series with the main 3 games and the 2 X spin-offs. I think the most interesting thing about the Gunvolt series is how it tries to ease you into play, and then the steep cliff near the end where it goes, no, for real, learn how to dodge. But that whole learning experience of letting you take it as far as you want to, and then further letting that express itself through its score attack gameplay is the most interesting thing about it. Also, you know, I wanted a Mega Man game and we didn't have a Mega Man game, so that was as close as I was gonna get. Host YouTube, and I'm back with another video review. Growing up, I've always been a fan of Mega Man. Blue was a pretty cool color as a kid. Much like my joy for Sonic, my original enjoyment for Mega Man came from the cartoon. You know the one. My SNES was a hand-me-down, so I only got like 2 new games for it, so my first Mega Man game was actually on the PlayStation, which was Mega Man X6. I get why people dislike it, and I don't think it's that good myself, but until you get to the final area, I think it's pretty fun just to jump and shoot around. Then I borrowed a few of the older games from some friends. I got Command Mission on the GameCube, I played the ZX series, I got the X Collection on the PS2, and the next closest thing I got to the series was this game, Azure Striker Gunvolt, a game created by Inti Creates. From the people that gave us the Mega Man Zero and the ZX series, this is their first self-published game all on their own. Knowing that going in, it was a pretty easy buy and I enjoyed myself with this whole series ever since. The world of Gunvolt is one of normal humans and special ability holders called adepts. Adepts are being hunted down by the powerful conglomerate Sumeragi Group, who have a hold on the entire island nation of Japan, ranging from their sole private military power to controlling their very media. It's up to our young adept hero, Gunvolt, who wields the Azure Striker, the ability to wield electricity. With the help of the resistant organization Quill, he won't let the Sumeragi group do what they will with innocent adepts. We first join him in the middle of a mission to find the program called the Muse, which has been detecting the location of adepts for Sumeragi through the power of her music. With that introduction out of the way, we are now thrown into the middle of the game with an intro stage. Really capturing that Mega Man-like feel, our protagonist's weapon of choice is a gun, but unlike the Blue Bomber, your shots don't do much damage. But what they do lead to is your main form of attacking, your flash field. By itself, your flash field also doesn't do much damage, in fact it's worse than your gun. The trick is to shoot your gun to tag enemies and then activate your flash field to deal focused damage. You can stack up to 3 tags on one enemy, and the more tags they have, the more damage you do. And all of these ways of attacking stack on top of each other as well. Using your flash field uses up your EP meter. EP stands for Electro Psycho, a fun fact for all of us, even me. You can always replenish your EP by double tapping down on whatever you feel comfortable moving your character with. D-pad, control stick, I won't judge you. Why aren't you playing this game on D-pad? What are you doing? In terms of movement with your controller of choice, much like Mega Man X, Gunvolt has a dash and a wall kick, but he can't slide down them, so watch out. Last but not least is the Prevasion skill. Whenever Gunvolt gets hit, he has this blue phase effect, nullifying the damage. That's Prevasion. Each hit takes a chunk of EP away, but as long as you have the smallest amount, it will activate. It doesn't activate, however, if you take damage while you have your flash field up. As long as you keep your EP filled up, you are mostly invincible throughout the game. That being said, if your EP does run out, Gunvolt starts to overheat, but his attack is limited to his gun, and you are left defenseless until it replenishes on its own. I think Prevasion is this game's most unique mechanic, at least for newcomers to the genre. This constant safety net that is juxtaposed to how you deal most of your damage in this game is interesting to me. If you let it, You're able to focus on one of the most unsung aspects of this type of game, which is evasion. This brings in an interesting dynamic with how you choose to evade and attack simultaneously throughout the entire game. It really lowers the barrier of entry into this game without also lowering the ceiling for high level play at the same time. Add in the fact that the flash field slows your aerial descent, you get this very movement focus based game, and I find that enjoyable in a different way than the Zero series focus on combos. Continuing with the game, we finally make it to the end of the level where we find out that the Muse isn't some kind of computer program, but a little girl who is having her powers manipulated by force. Seeing someone in a similar situation that he once was in, Gunvolt decides to save the girl even if it means going against the mission and cutting ties with Quill to do so. You join up with this duo 6 months later, and they found a place of their own to call home. And Gunvolt is still doing the same thing he's always been doing, with the same people he's been doing it with. Some bits of this story make you wonder why they even bother sometimes, but ignoring that, we are presented with the basic gameplay loop. Much like your classic Mega Man games before it, you have a list of levels to pick from with a boss at the end of each stage to beat. Instead of 8 presented stages, we have 6. Very different. You have a subaquatic base that is filled with trapped wormholes, but its true trap is the water that tries to impede your progress and shorts out your power. A pharma lab that houses deadly plants and swarms of bugs that devour anything in their path. A biochem plant that starts off with a train ride and leads into you jumping over lava pits to make your way further in. What? The plot turned back on. Horny adepts in my area. Let's talk about home base before we head out. You can hit the left button to open up your sub menu. Don't forget to save your game. It doesn't autosave, so you have to manually do it yourself. However, you can check your stats. Enemies dispatched, bosses dispatched, electricity used, what name you. But you can also check your options. You can change all of your buttons, and you can also set the sound whether you want to hear the audio or not. But more importantly, you can check your skills. Skills are special abilities that you are able to use from the start of the game, but the more you level up, the more skills you get. And gear. Gear augments Gunvolt's abilities, and they are made with the materials that you get from completing levels. You can change your gear on the fly during a level, but you cannot change your skills, so make sure to set them right before you leave. Inventory, which checks the items that you get from bosses, gear that you make from materials, and the materials themselves. And finally, stats. You can check your health, EP, level, experience points. Every time you level up, you also gain a +5 to health. You don't gain any SP, I don't know why they put that there. One of the most important things is the challenges. Each time you beat a stage, you open up a set of challenges that you can then clear to gain bonus rewards such as credits or a guaranteed item drop. It's very important. But I think one of the most important things is the synth dealer. You can sell the items you get, which is fine, but more importantly, you synth gear. Now this gear can do a multitude of things, so let's go over the first type, which are eye gear. Contacts. Gunvolt's able to wear 2 of them. They have a multitude of different uses, such as increasing recovery pickup effects, decrease the EP expenditure of your flash field, more credits, more experience, more SP, all very different. You have rings, which affect Gunvolt's movement, which I think is pretty important overall. You can get a boost band, which can perform 3 air hops. You can perform air dashes, and then you can do both depending on how many gear you make. In fact, the only way to get more gear such as the blue streak band is by making the jump and the air dash rings as well. And finally you have lockets, which I think is more defensive based than the other two. I mean, other than this one is increased flash field's attack damage, but you have ones such as enables perversion at a lower EP cost, prevents knockback, you just take less damage, or the very special disable pervasion and make spikes fatal, but you get a 10% kudos gain. Really, wearing their past on their sleeves with this one. But there is one other very cute option in this game, and that is talking to Jewel. Talking to Jewel, well, it makes you feel closer. It's very cute. It allows you to get a look into the lives of these two characters. It's all the character development you're gonna get from like most of these two anyway, except for these in-game conversations that they're talking about, which are in later re-releases of this game. Oh my god, you're doing my job for me. It's like you know. Part of me loves this, and part of me also hates this. But at the end of it, you always feel a little closer to Jewel each time. Now let's head out to the Red Light District, Sinner's Row, the first real story-driven level after our intro stage. Partway through, we run into this very provocative adept, Zonda, who uses his Septima ability to turn the stage upside down. Oh, bottomless pits, how I missed you. No, I didn't. Get out of here. As we dash, jump, and flash field our way through the stage, we run into our party crasher, Kopin. The proto to our Mega, he steals the stage for his own and becomes our boss battle. But seeing how we're halfway there, I think it's time to bring up a few more gameplay elements. I stated before that you have a special moves along with a special meter. Your move range from attack focus like the Astro Sphere to healing and small boosts to drops in power. Each one takes up a different amount of meter, which has 3 sections. Like EP, your special meter recovers over time, but at a much slower rate however. It's fast enough to be used multiple times during a level and still have at least one at the start of a boss and gain another by the time near the end. A second mechanic is the Revival Anthem. Upon death, there is a chance that the muse will sing you a reviving song. You have unlimited EP, you can jump and air dash without the need of rings, and continuously at that. But I think that's it. You don't really need a damage boost because you can continuously attack forever, so who cares, right? Once this revival song kicks off, it's an easy wash either way. And speaking of an easy wash, Kopin is defeated and he lives on to hate adepts another day. Don't know why he's so mad, something about adepts being unnatural or something racist like that. Now I think it's time for me to enter my very own ramble corner where I talk about things related to the game but also kind of not. Translation's hard. Localization is hard. This game's localization is fine for the most part. It's just, when this game originally released on the 3DS, there was no voice acting in the North American release. I'm pretty sure any international release at that. After releasing on Steam, the game got updated with the Japanese voice audio, along with in-game stage dialogue that was cut. Honestly, I think they get in the way a little bit, and they would have 100% been cumbersome without any extra VO. But even with it, it's about 90% cumbersome. You can change the opacity of the cut-ins to however you want them to be, with the minus button on Switch at least, and something else on another console I assume. Overall, I think it is a very nice addition, but however for our North American release, it kinda compounds my problem with the localization, and that's mostly with name changes. So, all of our bosses are named after cars. Viper, Zonda, Kopin, Coretta, etc. It's just that in Japanese, some of these car names are different. Daytona, Patera, Acura. Maybe somehow these car manufacturers caught wind of this small video game and gave them a cease and desist for their international release. But I kinda doubt that, right? But hey, maybe that did happen. But then we run into the problem with names such as Jewel and Lumen, who were originally Cyan and Morpho, and I'm just wondering why. To hear these names being shouted and yelled and seeing them be different on screen is just very odd to me. You hit this point in localization where they have to localize what someone personally thinks is cool in Japanese to what that localizer personally thinks is cool in whatever language they are localizing to, right? For an example, it really comes up hard with English-based names in Japanese media. Localizers feel the need to match this foreign factor, so at least in English-based media that I've seen, they pick things like Spanish or French. I get it. In the original non-voice release, I didn't care because I didn't have to hear any of this, but now that I do, I can't get over it. Cyber Diva turns into Muse. Short and sweet, which I guess is fine, but Lumen, I don't get that one. A reference to light? A Russian band reference? I don't know. I know what a Morpho Butterfly is. That's her main Moffat, so that change goes over my head. As for Jewel, instead of referencing her in Gunvolt's color, cyan, we reference his electrical ability? Don't get this either, but maybe they didn't get the cyan from the Japanese enunciation of Xian, which is fair because I didn't get the car references until I looked it up, because I don't know anything about cars. But this guy's name is Carrera, no matter where you are, and the light bulb illuminated in my head when I realized this. Viper isn't just his name because he's a wannabe tough guy. I mean, it is, but not just because. Either way, I still have this issue for the next two games, but their newest game as of this video, Luminous Avenger X2, will have their first English voice cast for the game series, so I know I won't have a problem for at least my second playthrough. Long ramblings aside, we have 3 more areas to take on, like running through and completely ruining a data store just by being there with our flash field on. Those flash field challenges also don't help. We get to scale a giant media tower that puts our movement to the test by dodging and utilizing propulsion pads. And finally, we lurk the hidden underground stratacombs that rob us of our sight and houses zombies. Be careful, they bite. Our final reward for beating up 7 cars is Joel getting kidnapped while we were away. We make a mad dash for her, but it's too late. A revived boss takes her away, and we finally reach the end game. If the last level tested our speed, this one tests your patience by bombarding you with plenty of enemies when that affects how your flash field carries you through the air. And seriously, they put 3 of these assholes in this level, come on! But by the end, we start our tried and true tradition of a boss rush. Segmented, but still present. After defeating Merit, we start ascending the orbital elevator of Babel, where we face off once again against the likes of Stratos, Yoda, Viper, and a small twist on our boss fight with Elise, which comes to an end with our rematch with Copen, which is quite similar to how it happened the first time. So we move on to the final stage with our final boss, Nova, who uses the power of the Muse against us. This really is an NT Creates game when you look at it. Oh, he's gigantic. But after we beat him in his second form, we save Japan from having all of their adepts forcibly controlled by their own kind. Something Eternal Chaos, something Civil War. Sounds like a problem for later. Look, Asimov is here, one of our Quill friends. He's here to greet us. That's nice. They helped us get in here. Oh man, this is great. Oh. Well, that's not how this game ends. I wonder how we get the true ending. Maybe it had something to do with these jewels that we found in the original 6 stages in Sinner's Row. Anyway, let's talk about how this game is different from the other NT Creates platformers. I feel like Gunvolt was created to fill a gap that Mega Man wasn't in at the time. In fact, Mega Man wasn't in much at the time. It would take a while for things to get better for him, so people were really looking forward to this. That gap that I'm talking about is filling up a spot of a Mega Man game that focuses on points. It is in this aspect that I consider Gunvolt similar to the Zero series, but unlike the Zero games, this one doesn't lock things away from you for being bad at the game. The game rewards you points called kudos that go up as long as you attack enemies in a natural way. It also starts giving you a multiplier on your overall points once you cash them in. You can cash them in by hitting the checkpoint or using an offensive special skill. The more points you get, the better your rank at the end of the stage is, and the more chances you have at getting materials at the end of the level. The game encourages you to get more points by having a song change when you hit 1,000 kudos gained. Songs sung by the voice of Lumen herself. It also tries to promote you to finish the stage without locking in points until the very end. That's why I had to go out of my way to make footage of me using special skills in the middle of levels. Under normal circumstances, you are only able to take 3 hits before you lose all of your kudos. There is an easier setting that doesn't let you lose kudos at all, and a harder setting that makes you lose them only after taking 1 hit, but each lowers or raises the point multiplier respectively. I think the only thing left to do is to start talking about positives and negatives of the game. I think the material synthesis system is awful. If you're just going from stage to stage, you aren't making any gear that matters until after you beat the first 6 bosses. The gear that matters is your double jump and air dash, which I think should be base abilities of 1 each. The challenges give you set materials to alleviate this problem a bit, but it's not enough seeing how you can only complete them once and you have to beat a stage first to unlock them anyway. I'd give a bigger critique in fixing this problem, but they already did that in the 3rd game, and I hope they keep that system moving forward so we will also move on. One of the criticisms I heard a lot when this game initially released was that it felt pretty slow, especially compared to this company's previous games such as the Zero and the ZX series, which is fair. This game is indeed slower than those other 2 games, but I feel like people have this weird misconception about the game flow. I get the feeling that people felt the need to shoot their enemies and then stop and kill them completely before they moved on, and just looking at the game by itself, I can understand that. However, the game doesn't teach you to play it that way at all. I at least don't think it does, but using the first stage as an example, you start in an area that halts your progress with crates that you have to leap over. Then they put enemies on top of those crates to keep you grounded, so you learn about tagging in the flash field. It's pretty slow, but the second part of the level is completely different. You have these shutters that drop down if you aren't fast enough to get past them. The gauge is encouraging you to move quickly through the area even though it has enemies about. This is then further elevated by enemies that throw bombs at you. You can wait for them to drop their shield and throw a bomb, or you can jump behind them. You could also just sit there attacking with your flash field, but then we're right back to our perceived problem. Because all of your attacks stack at the same time, the simplest game plan for Gunvolt is to shoot in front of you at all times, flash field when you hear you got a hit, keep shooting to do more damage, and they'll get fully tagged. Make the jump over them. With your flash field's contact damage, they'll probably be dead by the time you land, and if not, just jogging away from them without dashing will probably kill them before they get off screen. It feels pretty effortless to me now that I've played the game a lot. So I think most people were having a problem with getting their minds wrapped around how you play this game as compared to the other games from indie creates. And that's just me trying to get a high score, because this game rewards you points even if you don't kill enemies. I love games that give me points for being cool. Full strike, air strike, doubles, triples, it feels good and it doesn't really matter, and it doesn't feel like you're failing when you don't get it. I think C is the lowest rank you can get in this game, and the timer only looks bad if you're too slow about beating the level. I think the whole flat-footed idea really sticks out with the bosses, at least compared to the Zero games. I mean, you aren't doing sick combos in this game. But because of the 3 things that I told you with attacking, you're still moving around just as much to do full damage, especially when assholes do full screen supers. I like writing these reviews by going through the story and mixing it up with gameplay mechanics, and I give my general ideas on that throughout. The problem is this story is not that good. I mean, the end-stage dialogue is neat with your operators from Quill, but the most fleshed out Gunvolt gets is with his conversations with Jewel, but you have to go out of your way to get them. Overall, it's fine, and it does make me feel when it wants to try like it's ending, but I think the scenario's scope is a bit too big for the type of game they made. Gunvolt is a multimedia franchise to all of its detriments. But talking about aesthetic, the art in this game is great. The character sprites are great, the bosses look intimidating, the areas you go to can be pretty basic and industrial, but the colors and the detail just give them this special kind of mood. The music is just as fitting. If I have one small problem with it, it's that after a while the stage music gets pushed out of your brain for the Lumen songs, so it's hard to remember them sometimes. But the home base theme, Nova's boss music, it's all good. I think this game is very good. It's Inti Create's first self-published game, and they've been around since the late 90s. While this game wasn't what some people wanted it to be, I think it's very unique and worth a buy. Hello, YouTube, and today I don't really have to do an intro this time. It's a sequel video. I don't have to explain the history with the series to try and have you empathize with me. I don't have to prove I know what I'm talking about with a bunch of experience that hardly really matters in the long run. I don't even have to tell you the title because I'm sure all of you can read. But even still, let's begin this review of Azura Striker Gunvolt 2. So, where do we leave off last in Gunvolt? Right. So then Jill gets shot, she fuses with the Muse, and then fuses with Gunvolt, and then they go and shoot Asimov. Having killed his father figure, Gunvolt leaves his old friends forever to go and make new friends, and continue to do the things he was always doing before, with his depression episode happening between games, so it's almost like nothing matters. The further I looked into the plot of these games, the angrier I got. But it's fine because the game hardly touches on these plot points anyway, so who cares? We open up this story at the headquarters of the Sumeragi group. After having their inner structure and main defense force gutted, the three top dogs have to reassess their priorities moving forward. Or they would if they weren't under a surprise attack from a surprise guest. The surprise attack is from one of their own airships that has been hijacked. Luckily for their sakes, more so the civilians down below, Gunvolt is on the scene. The Azura Striker and Muse are back in action. Our intro stage is simple once again. The game teaches you its basic mechanics of tag and zap. All of your old mechanics are back with no new additions to your basic toolkit. Evasion, dashing, wall kicking, and flash fielding are all intact. So intact that we can pay attention to the in-game dialogue that still has the same button settings, but a little extra for a later explanation. But more importantly, we get an in-game demonstration of the Muse mechanic this time. This is also still the same as the original, infinite jumping, air dashing, and EPing, which is good because someone is getting a little rowdy and trying to speed up the stage. Our intro boss is another giant robot that we kill in no time at all. This boss does however reinforce what your flash field is and isn't able to protect you from. Skills once again make a return and they work the same as they did in the last game, however this time you can set a shortcut to your X button. Shortcut button may vary on console preference. Meanwhile down below, someone else is on a hunt of their own. Copen arrives on the scene and needs to get on the out of control airship as well. It seems to be the location of his kidnapped twin sister, Mithril. It's French. Oh, God. He needs to find a way to get on the ship, and his comms command, Nori, will give him the fastest route there. Copen is our new playable character for this sequel. He shares similarities with Gunvolt, but his way of play is completely different. First off, his gun is way more powerful. But more importantly, he can naturally air dash and for a much longer distance. These dashes ricochet off hard surfaces from walls to ceilings to floors. This leads into his main gimmick and how he tags enemies himself. He dashes into them for a small amount of damage and then his shots home in on them. He also has Gunvolt's pre-evasion skill, but unlike Gunvolt's, his pre-evasion is based on his bullet meter. Copen's bullet meter manages his pre-evasion and his air dashes. They reload over time like Gunvolt's EP meter, and just like him, if you double tap down twice, he reloads them automatically. But unlike Gunvolt, he doesn't end up in a weakened state from running out of bullets. He also gains bullets after hitting any solid object or enemy. Also, if you recharge in the air, he will do a ground stomp that can deal damage. I wouldn't try it because it's not that strong and you just take contact damage if you don't kill with it. I don't have an example because I've learned my lesson. Walk forward a little bit and you'll run into your Pot Bit companion Lola. an AI program that takes care of Copen's armor, but more importantly, she controls his flash field and EX weapons. Copen's flash field is different than Gunvolt's because it reacts automatically, but it isn't tied to his bullet system like Pervasion is. It's tied to his EX weapon meter. The EX meter controls your EX weapons, such as Stellar Spark. Your EX weapons also gain homing properties when you tag enemies, and some even change their other properties as well. The drawback is that Copen's flash field only activates when he has full EX meter. In my opinion, all of these advantages give Copen an easier time throughout this game than Gunvolt. He can recharge his Pervasion at any time, and his high movement pretty much makes flash field irrelevant, and if you choose to be defensive, you don't even have to think about using your flash field at all. But overall consensus seems to be that his movements make up for his more ease of play, giving players easier access to the faster pace that they've always craved. But on with the level, we've been chased by this air gunner and it's about time we've dealt with it. One special move later, Copen witnesses Gunvolt's slow descent of the falling airship with the help of Jewel, and seeing it as a chance to keep it from crashing, Copen shoots it, diverting its path with a move that we don't get to use in this game. Luckily for Copen, Gunvolt managed to save the sister he was looking for, but unbeknownst to the both of them, they are ambushed by a few of the interlopers that caused this mess in the first place. A new adept called Tinjin, and a revived Zonda. With breasts? No, wait, there's that spike cock piece. Joel does her best to try and protect Gunvolt, but it seems her powers are shorting out and Zonda takes this time to trap her in a mirror that Tinjin then breaks apart, collecting the broken pieces. Finally completing their true motive, Zonda reveals their true self, a little girl. An oracle of another adept group called Eden. Unlike Quill that only plans to stop the discrimination and abuse of adepts, Eden has a more drastic plan to make a utopia of only adepts. Zonda takes her leaves as Tinjin extends an inviting hand to Gunvolt that is promptly refused and leads to a boss fight. One boss fight later, we defeat Tinjin, who wasn't even at his full boss power because of some actually halfway decent plot reasons. Copen also manages to break free, and Lola manages to steal one of the mirror shards for herself, and Gunvolt is left to wallow in his own misery alone once again. Or is he? It seems that even broken to bits, a small piece of Joel is still with him but diminished in power, so our gameplay status quo is preserved, our bosses are set, and you are able to choose your character. We're picking Copen because there's still more plot here. God, is there more plot? We join Copen, who is trying to figure out how the mirror piece works, but gives up and decides to check on his sister. Mr. Michiru is a sickly girl who lost her voice from an operation she had years ago, and she spent a lot of her time with Lola while she was being created. This time, however, the two's meeting causes a transformation. Look, even more cute idol girls. Copen needed his own after all. Either way, it seems the return of the two causes Michiru to feel better, and Copen continues to try to find a correlation to everything. As for Gunvolt, he gets a new pair of clothes thanks to his text and comms guy, Xiao Wu, who also used to work for Quill, but now mostly helps Gunvolt on the side. And then there's Quinn, a completely normal girl. But the two use her house as their home base. Why? Because, that's why. And the sad thing is I'm not making a joke. The only other special thing about her is that she can communicate with Jewel, and the only other person that can do that is Gunvolt. With that out of the way, we've now reached our gameplay loop once again. Because this game is split between two characters, we're only presented 4 stages at first. For Gunvolt, we have a mysterious manor that is watched by the full moon, that's full of spikes, trapped iron maidens, and once again, zombies. There are the sewers where you have to worry about water levels so your flash field doesn't short you out. Then you have to watch out for not only water bullets, but torrents of whirlpools that impede your progress. Finally, another data facility, but this time the whole building is made of data itself. Cross over the screen like you're Pac-Man and navigate new flash field puzzles while you try to get through this dizzying data store. On Copen's end, you make another run up the orbital elevator of Babel. The elevator at the bottom seems to be out of order, so we have to make our way up until we find a floor where it's working. We just have to deal with the enemies and hair as we make our way up. Then there's the Prism Highway. The road has been destroyed by crystals and we have to find the adept responsible. We just have to make sure our shots still aim true even when it's altered by the crystals, and chase down the boss with the help of Nori and her bike. Next up for Copen is the Isle of Dreams, or as I like to call it, the Dome. It's a robot scrapyard where you have to watch out for reanimating robots, falling garbage, grinders, and 2 boss fights. Both, however, share their 4th stage, the Frozen City, but before we get going, let's talk about our home base first. So home base for both characters is pretty much the same, and also pretty much the same as the last game, so no auto-saving, never forget, and if you do, save again. There's a really handy in-game explanation on the game mechanics and terms this time around. Mountable buttons are back once again. Would really like to have sound options, not gonna lie, but this is a port of a 3DS game, so I don't know how common that is. One great feature is the story mode setting. You can set your opacity clearly from here, and you can also set if you want the portraits and VO on and off as well, too. Challenges are back once again, and while you still need to beat a stage first to unlock its specific ones, you don't have to select which ones you want to complete, and the game does the checking for you after every stage, so you just need to cash them in. You can once again change your loadouts, but that is different between both characters. The biggest difference gameplay-wise is that you can change everything, including skills during the levels themselves for both characters this time around. Gunvolt still has all of his old equipment slots with one new one that I will be explaining later. For a more specific change, each pendant has its own provision amount that changes depending on which one you pick. As stated before, skills are still the same with the exception of the shortcut button. However, for Gunvolt, if you look through certain levels close enough, you might be able to find a special skill that doesn't use any meter. As for Copen, he only gets to have 2 special skills in the game, his attack skill and a heal skill that can only be used from the start menu. Copen's loadout, on the other hand, uses a completely different system altogether. He has a program system that uses subroutines to fill up a number of memory slots. Subroutines are varied from damage to defense to covering all of your bases and more. Your only problem comes from filling up too many at once. If you do that, you can cause bugs to appear. Bugs have effects that range from you doing less damage, you taking more damage, having subroutines that you have installed not work, or at worst, you have just 1 HP and it all seemingly happens at random. Both characters have a chance at gaining equipment with EXP gauges on them. Unlike the normal leveling system that levels you up anytime during gameplay, your items only level up at the end of stages. For Gunvolt, leveling up items mean that they become more effective, such as doing more damage or becoming more cost efficient, like your air dash taking up less EP to use. For Copen, it means that your routines will take up 1 less space in the memory slot. As stated before, the leveling system is still in this game. Gunvolt still gains skills and HP, while Copen gains HP and extra memory slots. Copen can also gain extra memory in some of the levels, just like the jewels you found in the first game. Gunvolt just finds cast deposits, so if you find one with him, check again with Copen and that's where it should be. We're finally back at the synth shop and it didn't get better. In fact, I think it got worse. It's the same as last time. If you're just playing through the game stage to stage, it's not useful. Unlike the last game where you had to incrementally make most of your items, this one gives you a more branching path approach. You see, when you make one item, you unlock a multitude of other items at once that can be made with the previous one. It feels like I should have more choice, but it feels a bit more restrictive than it should be. It doesn't help that the level up gear can't be used in making new ones as well, so I hardly get a feel for the first gear that I have before it asks me to make something else entirely. I feel like it's especially bad for Copen because you don't feel like you're being efficient when your memory isn't fully maxed out. It doesn't have any of the smaller gear that I need because I've already used them and turned them into something else. Sure, you can always go back and make more of them, but making 2 of the same gear for any reason feels like a waste. But they fixed it in the 3rd game, so my only critique is, boy, is it bad here. Back to the plot, the Frozen City is just as the name implies, cold, slippery, and full of spikes. Wait, one interesting thing is that there are these little pods that you can attack and keep yourself from slipping on the ice for a little while. The second interesting thing is that you have a rival battle here. No real plot significance, so bop them, play the level a little bit more, and bop the boss and you're on your way. With these 4 levels down, the plot moves once again. I mean, it moved a little bit when you killed the first 3 of them, but it's the most nothing I've seen in a while. Oh man, the final boss is watching. Isn't she so cool by how steadfast she is in the face of danger? Either way, this means that Gunvolt has to head down to the highway and Copen heads down to the sewers. The reason is the same. sister has been kidnapped once again. Oh man, typing this out makes me even more angrier than I was watching it. Anyway, two of the bosses you didn't kill in that run are the new ones that have now kidnapped her in the corresponding stories. One of them lets the other get away with the girl, and this becomes a singular boss stage. After they are defeated, however, we have to make our way into the enemy's headquarters, the garden. But let's talk about special weapons first. I glazed over this in the review of the first game, but Gunvolt gets special weapons for defeating bosses. They are the same from the first game minus the secret one that makes it play more like classic Mega Man. All of your guns have different uses, from aligning them to hit enemies easier, to shooting through objects, to ricocheting from enemy to enemy. The thing was that in the past game, each gun had its own set number of tags. I normally used the Orochi for stages because it had 8 tags to use, and I used the Cerberus in its 3 tags for boss fights for its rate of fire. As stated before, in this game you gain a new tag slot in your loadout menu. This lets you set the number of tags you have no matter what gun you use in the game. The more tags you have, the less damage you do to enemies overall, and the less tags you have, vice versa. I think this is a pretty interesting way to keep all of the shot types viable, and an interesting way to pick which style of playthrough that you want to do. Do you want to go for as many points as you can with a bunch of tags, or kill as fast as you can with few? They're synth items, so it's not like you'd be able to make them anyway, so whatever. Copen, on the other hand, gains EX weapons. You pull a Mega Man and you gain the boss's septima power to use with your EX meter. Find the boss's weakness, and their HP is shredded to pieces. With that final bit, we head to the garden where the difficulty finally starts to spike. And by that I mean there's a bunch of spikes in the first half, and a bunch of bottomless pits in the second. Garden 2 is interesting in that Gunvolt and Copen have different routes for the first half of the level, where Gunvolt has a flash field challenge that you can cheese by having a lot of tags, or spend too long on by forgetting how shutters work. One of these solutions leads to the other's problem, and I think you can figure out which is which. Copen, on the other hand, has to deal with more bottomless pits. Having essentially a jetpack does make this a bit more fair, but it's still a bit nerve-wracking. The second half is a gauntlet of enemies that the game tries to make you feel bad for, but then you remember how they were simping over getting a year's supply of one of their boss's hair, so I don't feel too bad about it. Also, the genocide thing, I guess. These last stages are where you fight the other 2 bosses you didn't get to fight during your character's run. And it's finally time, once again, in Garden 3, do we have our boss rush. And this lasts us all the way up until the final boss herself, Zonda. Twice. Or 3 times. Well, there's just 2 boss fights. Even though she steals away our power of resurrection, she is easily defeated like everyone else. Not even a big final, "Oh no, you do not know what you've wrought, Gunvolt," but a, "I can't believe I was defeated, Oni-san." I guess I can talk about the secret ending because Gunvolt 3 doesn't even have a release date. I don't want to pretend like anything in the story matters after all. To get the secret ending this time, all you have to do is beat the game with both characters once. Easy. Then go back and do the boss rush, and the 2's cliffhanger showdown turns into a boss fight where Lola and Jewel fuse with Mithril and power up whoever you're fighting against because you defeated them in the first round. After all the fighting is said and done, the girl called Mithril catches a case of plot amnesia, not remembering her being Copen's sister or the time she spent with Gunvolt as Jewel, and in the end both boys remove themselves from her life hoping she can find peace. If I was indifferent about the story in the first game, I actively don't like it here, and the main problem is that in doing these reviews I look up stuff for them that we didn't get over here in the West, and none of the information I find is particularly good or compelling. There's a lot I want to say, but I'll boil it down to that all of the characters feel like action figures that are being smashed together to get to whatever downer ending they want to do. Quinn is the best example. She exists so Gunvolt can be the protagonist. Can any of you follow that line of thinking? Because even with context, I still can't. This is the bit where I say a lot. The series writers said that he couldn't envision Gunvolt as a hero after the events of the first game. In fact, he would become an enemy of Copen for the second game. You would unlock him later after fighting him for some reason. The series director wanted Gunvolt as the protagonist, and the only way the writer could make that happen was to have Quinn, a literal emotional support character, and that's all. At least characters like Nori and Xiao have a plot function. Quinn is here to fill Jewel's role because she's no longer real, but Joel is still there, so it feels redundant. She is the one-dimensional character people think other multifaceted characters are, but everyone else is also kind of one-dimensional too. I'm not expecting much from the quirky bad guy squad. They're evil and I don't really care about their backstories that explain why they're evil. It's not compelling because all of them choose genocide as their main end goals. But it just sucks that even our 11-year-old final boss can't have a bigger picture than just mass murder. The previous big boss at least went with slavery with benefits, who was then superseded by a genocidal antagonist. And the fact that I had to say slavery with benefits is nuanced should tell you how bad our characters are, because they're nothing more than their end goals and one personality trait. And you know what, I'd be fine if our main characters also weren't awful. Gunvolt isn't enough of a character to be good or evil on his own values or volition. Copen is just a carbon copy of Gunvolt, but racist. Stoic, troubled protagonists who are grounded by their morality pets. But the thing that makes me the most upset is that there's enough writing in the overall scenario to make it good. Copen is someone who doesn't change at all in the whole game, and his ideals are only challenged in the secret ending. Instead of just fucking around the whole game with enemies that just prove his points right, you should bring in the fact that his dead father wasn't killed by Sumeragi, but in fact murdered during an inhumane experiment on an adept that just so happens to be Asimov. But that's not in the game, so who cares? Have him find out his sister is an adept earlier than the final boss. Have him just think about the things he's doing in at least half of the game. Gunvolt's story is just the first one again, but this time he's sad because his first waifu is a ghost, and Joel is sad because she doesn't have a physical body. Which is probably part of the reason to wanting to make him the antagonist, but that thought process seems equally shallow to me. But you know what, when Gunvolt 3 comes out, it's probably gonna do both. I'm calling it right now. In Gunvolt 3, Gunvolt is working with Sumeragi to take down Copen, who might be the third playable character in that game. I mean, 3 playable characters was another pitch for this game as well, that third character being Xiao, who is now just shady and sneaky with ulterior motives by the end of it all. The biggest problem is that there's so much writing in this series and none of it really relates back to the games or the characters themselves. It's all setting for the narrative and explains why characters are where they are, but hardly relates back to them in any way that matters. The overall aesthetic is still very good though. This game is very pretty. This time we get some new locations like a moonlit manor or a destroyed highway, but its industrious feel is still very heavy-handed. It does take place in the future after all, I guess. But levels like the data center and even the town feel like a nice change of pace from stages like Babel or the sewers, which are still very well done in their own right. Music is still very on point and a bit more upbeat than the last game, but that might just be the highway theme sticking out to me. The auto songs still get in the way and beat out everything else in this game, and you get another one to do different renditions for themes in this game. I think the difficulty has been risen from the first game, and level layouts and traps that try to trip you up. They realized how easy Pervasion system has made it and decided to just amp up the number of bottomless pits, but luckily they saved most of them for the end game. You can, however, decide to challenge yourself with one of the in-game items that makes spikes kill you in one hit. And now that we're near the end, I should actually talk about how I'm playing this game. As mentioned briefly, I am playing this on my Nintendo Switch, the Striker Pack, which includes both the first and the second game. That means all of the DLC and updates for the original 2 games have been packaged in as well. A Striker Pack has been made for the 3DS version as well, but this in the PS4 version has higher quality art CGs, and they run at a smooth 60 frames per second. As for the DLC that was added, they added audio lockets from the first game that play the songs from there, that also give you a boost to EXP and money when you hit 1,000 kudos. They also have remixed stages where you can fight bosses from the first game and super versions of the bosses of Gunvolt and Copen in this game. It also includes other speedrun and challenge modes with preset stipulations on them. If you're thinking about picking up a version of this game, pick up this one or the PS4 version. Either way, I think the whole pack is worth it. You get 2 fun games with a lot of replay value and extra modes. I didn't even talk about the Christmas mode in Gunvolt 1, where levels gain ice physics and you have to catch presents that only unlocks around the 25th. Gunvolt 2 is a great sequel in that it is just the first game, but bigger, better, and it has a whole new character added. I've been playing a striker-packed version of this game for so long I forgot that in the original release of 1, there weren't any separate kudos mode and you could only take one hit before everything reset. So this release is the real definitive way to play these games. I highly recommend it on gameplay alone, and if you don't care about the story, you can turn it off and it's not even there enough in the first place for it to matter. Hopefully for my timing's sake, we only have one more game in the overall Gunvolt franchise to get to, so until then, mata ao. Osh YouTube, we're closing in on the end of these Gunvolt Chronicles. Did you know that this game was titled Steel of X, the Out of Gunvolt in Japan? Sometimes localization ain't that bad. This game's pretty weird. This is the series' first console HD release, but it's also obviously a side game, even more so now that we have more info on Gunvolt 3 coming out. It hits this odd spot of being dialed back, but also pushing the whole franchise forward at the same time. Either way, let's get this review of Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger X started. In the near future. Near future? There's giant robots in these games. What do they mean? Time is relative, but more importantly, not real. In the not so near future, the world is under the control of superpowered humans, adepts, while dwindling minority, Minos, are being executed by the Institute of the Promotion of Human Evolution, Sumeragi. Well, that's a turn. We join our protagonist Kopin as he's on the lookout for some Sumeragi adepts. He seems to be looking for some information, and it looks like he's found a lead in the desolate city part outside of the main Sumeragi buildings. We hop down into the destroyed city and we have to become accustomed with Kopin once again, and it's pretty much the same with some small tweaks here and there. First off, your pre-evasion takes 2 bullets instead of 1. That last one still activates like before, but it might catch you off guard this time. Good thing reloading is the same as before and it's free to do, and as always you double tap down whether you're in the air or not. The stomp also returns. Bullet dashing also works like before. Cool air dashes that take up 1 bullet and ricochets off solid objects and enemies, giving you back a bullet if you make a hit. But unlike the last game, however, your hover function lasts indefinitely and you can activate it just from jumping. Your EX weapon and flash field return and work exactly as they did before. No flash field without a full EX speeder. And as for gameplay, that's about it. We rush through the level and we meet someone who's pretty familiar but different. After an easy battle and a cutscene loss, that's not very fair, we're saved by a group of Minos children, Kohaku and her band of others. I'm kidding. These kids are just fine, it's just Kohaku's the only one that matters. And even then, Kopin and Lola need a place to stay, and these recently orphaned kids who are on the run from Sumeragi are kind enough to give us refuge. With a new base of operations, our search for information can continue, and we've once again reached our gameplay loop. You have 3 missions to choose from. You can find some food from a nearby broken down department store ruins. You can choose to burst into Sumeragi Building 13 by train and then deal with altered gravity once you've entered the building properly. Finding information was the reason we came here after all. Or you could go to the AutoFab plant to find battery packs for the base, where you have to watch out for the ones that you hit during your search. Or at least, I think they're battery packs. Yeah, that's about right. But after we've gotten a good amount of information, Kohaku gets sick. She catches a... oh man, I gotta be careful about this. She catches a mean germ that's been spreading around recently, and Sumeragi has actually created a cure for it, but unluckily for Minos like them, it's hands off. Seeing a girl in pain and murmuring for her lost big sister, it's up to Copen to break into the medical center and get the cure himself. But before that, let's talk about home base. Sure is lonely in here. So home base is pretty simple this time. We finally obtained the power of auto-saving, which is very nice. Button mapping is back once again. All of our manuals and gameplay details were on the start screen, so there's not much to look at here. You can set shortcuts to your EX weapons, to the 4-directional, and the push down of your right stick, but I only really find use in setting 3 of them myself. So let's talk about our subroutines. Subroutines return once again, and this time you only need to buy them with your credit drops. You love to see it. You still aren't getting a lot of them by the time you do a straight run through the game, but you will get enough to have a few upgrades, at least an extra bullet's worth, and none of them leave me as wanting as Gunvolt's double jump or air dash. And overall, that's about it. You can only check your stats on the pause menu and stages, and you only gain HP like before. Challenges are gone, but I feel like that's fully integrated into the score attack mode. This mode removes pervasion and starts you at level 1 for each mission. You do still gain levels during a run, and while it doesn't let you retry from checkpoints, you can reset the level as many times as you want to keep the levels and slowly brute force your way through it. Or get better. I couldn't do either myself. Either way, we have to go to the medical center to get that medicine for Kohaku, a pretty short level that leads us back to Blade. A few new moves that go through our evasion yet again, and a new berserk mode, but we managed to come out on top. They seem to react to Kohaku's name, but we don't have the time to waste here. We make our way back to base, and in no time at all, Kohaku is back to tip-top shape. This reminds me to bring up something else that I didn't really talk about much in the second game that returns back in both, and that is the talking option returns once again. The only reason I want to bring it up is that it isn't here just to make us closer to these kid characters. It focuses a narrative plot point of Copen trying to open up to someone else. I don't think it's much because, of course, the Copen that we know is going to be a bit more open with his fellow Minos, but it is a small arc that is present. Also, there's no dumb romance conversations in here unlike the bit of the first game and most of the second one with Gunvolt. I guess Copen got off a bit better there as well. Anyway, having 2 of your first 3 levels be about helping these kids really brings everything together, and it's kinda nice. Well, we got 3 more stages to try and find more information. We came here to learn the location of the butterfly effect, and we're almost there. First off, we could head to the radio tower Artemis to help decrypt the files we got from Building 13. An oddly familiar air raid in the beginning if you're a Mega Man fan, and a spike-filled climb to get our information. Then we need data keys to actually get to where the butterfly effect even is, which make up our next 2 levels. The actual abandoned and broken down data store from the first game, Data Center Alpha, is no longer a magnetic playground but a bottomless pit death trap. As for our last level, Data Center Beta, it's filled with more spikes and these odd locked doors. Also giant fuck you lasers. Watch out for those. After getting all that information, we can finally... I bet this base will come under attack. And right on time, giant Lola-like tanks fall from the sky, calling out the end of all Minos by an AI called Demerzel. We head out and it's a single boss stage, so let's talk about our EX weapons now that we've got a chance. Copen has the focus of this game, so his EX weapons also seem to have gotten much more care. You have some level design that recognizes that most of these attacks go through walls, so they hide extra goodies or give you a bit ease of play if you use them just right. Some enemies that are hard to deal with become way easier if you manage to use the right EX weapon against them, but this also is reflected in the bosses. Weaknesses were in the last game as well, and they were pretty strong. I'd say some were too strong, like fully charged Crystal Shot, but this game, however, all of them are super effective on their bosses. Some of them even get stun looped until they get to their 3rd bar and they're forced to do their mandatory super. There are a lot more minute things that I want to bring up again later, but more importantly, Lolo unlocks a new battle mode after your second battle with a blade. In this mode you gain infinite EX meter, but you lose the ability to attack with your EX weapons freely when they aren't locked on, and you take constant damage when you aren't locked on as well. And I think it's pretty considerable overall. However, when you are locked on, your EX weapons attack automatically and they do enhanced damage. The only other problem is that you can't deactivate this mode yourself unless you use your super, and it automatically deactivates on stage transitions when you hit a hexaplane gate. All of that is just to say that this boss fight is GG easy S+ rank, baby, let's go! This is the only S+ rank I can get in the game. Anyway, with our hideout no longer hidden, we are forced to take this fight to Sumeragi itself. The kids decide to run a distraction outside while we make our way into the base, but not before Kohaku gives us her lucky charm. It's a pendant her older sister used to wear that she's been holding on to, and now she hopes it grants us luck as well. Our mission is to head into the secret bunker. The first section is a modified version of Building 13's second half. The second area is an underground base that throws pretty much everything the game has offered at you. Spikes, bottomless pits, lasers, the whole shebang. There we have our final boss fight with Blade, who seems to have powered up even more. We fight them to a standstill, and the only thing that saves us is the pendant Kohaku gave us. Blade sees this and she regains her senses. She turns out to be Kohaku's older sister. She was forced to work for Sumeragi and hunt down her fellow comrades, but Copen tells her that there is no time to be worrying about that, and she should go and help her sister outside. He and Lola continue forward with their mission to find the butterfly effect. The next level is the start of our boss rush. If you thought this game was easier than the past two, you have no idea. You can fight these first three bosses using everything at your disposal without worrying about the next one. Want to use darkness mode and it takes a bit of damage? Want to use your super? Go right ahead. Checkpoints in this game restore your health to full and restore your special meter as well. You can give all three of your bosses your everything before you meet your objective, the butterfly effect. This thing has been controlling and powering up all of the add-ups for Sumeragi. That is because this mother brain looking thing is your little sister. For decades they have been using her against her will, and it's up to Copen to put everything to an end, and she thanks him for it. However, he still isn't finished, and he's decided to take out Sumeragi's main AI, the Merzel. We head into the last stage to take on the last three mute bosses of our boss rush, but at the end of it we seem to run into Asma from the first game. He's infiltrated Sumeragi and manipulated everything up until now. That explains the shift from controlling adepts to wiping out all non-ability holders. Yeah, that makes sense. He then explains the twist that this series follows the bad ending from the first game, where Gunvolt and Joel were both killed by him. We fight for a bit, but he is the same kind of fake hologram that our other bosses seem to have been. He reveals his true self, being one of pure energy, and reveals that Copen himself is a cyborg. Copen finds it odd that the Measle would be shocked by such a thing when their last meeting was at the end of the first game, which was over 100 years ago. You do battle once again, while you manage to destroy two of his life-sustaining tanks. He proves too much for you. You and Lola are incapacitated while he starts up his repair program, but Lola calls out to anyone that can hear her song, and Kohaku is the only one that manages to heed her call. She makes her way down into the lowest level where she's ambushed by a bunch of holograms, but her sister Blade comes in the nick of time and tells her to run to Copen. She manages to make her way to him and destroy the last container herself, freeing all Minos from being subjugated by one egomaniac. The group of four make their way out of the bunker and reunite with everyone else, finally attaining their happy ending. Well, that ending is pretty loaded, so let's talk about the story for a bit. I think the story is the best one yet, but that's not really saying much. If I'm apathetic to the first game and the second game actively frustrates me, this one is just a little bit better than the first. Copen enters this story his normal loner-like self, but he has to open up to strangers. If there's any big change from 2, it's that he doesn't spend the whole game yelling about how he hates adepts. You know, I read somewhere that someone thought that Copen is just as nice in this game as he was in 2, and that is true. Copen's dialogue with his sister and Nori in the past game is much like it is here, so everything comes down to how he deals with adepts and our antagonists. In fact, he seems to see them as equal as normal humans, but how is this expressed? As I said at the start, this game is dialed back. You only get cutscene dialogue, and the only one spoken in stage is by Lola, who cheers you on and gives you hint for the boss weaknesses. The small story that we do have is nice and compact. Each of our adversaries, the Falcons, have their own reasons for doing the things, and most of them are being forced by Sumeragi in different ways, but relate back to people that they care about being put in danger. Even ones not being threatened don't seem to care for Sumeragi itself, and you have this strong overbearing feeling on our antagonists that allows their individuality to shine out more. Even some extra story bits don't get me mad like in the second game. Rebellio is someone who was forced to do crimes by an anti-Sumeragi group who took his family hostage, and he was eventually caught and jailed. Now Sumeragi has him on death row and his family in the palm of their hands, so now he's forced to do work for them. Even in the game itself, Stella works for them because her butler, Dice 9, is an android that's gained a Septima, similar to Lola. She fights to keep him from being experimented on. After killing her in the first half of the game, Dice 9 becomes enraged and fights for his own revenge in the second half. I can't blame him, Stella's great, 10 out of 10 character design, cute accent, please, more Stella. I'm not gonna get more Stella, but can I get more Stella likes in the future, please? Incy Creates. While Blade's story is kind of bland and basic, it's something. I'm biased against my control plots, I really don't care for them, but all of the story of how she's brave does come back by the end of the game. I think this story is a little better, but it still held back most of it from a lack of character commitment. Our bosses and our side characters are as fleshed out as they need to be, but what about Copen, really? In the last review, I described Copen as a stoic, troubled protagonist with a morality pet. And racist. The pet character is still there in the form of the kids, but the story goes on, we learn that they aren't really needed for his morality, that has changed for the better, and he has become less racist. Good for him, but the question then becomes how? We don't get to see him grow, he just has. Just like Blade's mind control, she just turns into a different person. But, you know, that was a plot point. Where's Copen's change? His arc is opening up to a bunch of kids, but we don't get to see him grow from all of his faults in the previous game. Because that specific Copen doesn't exist here. Now he's actually just a white-haired Gunvolt. As for the story, I think it's fine, like, in terms of the plot based on itself. I don't know about Kohaku being the one to end everything as good or bad. The thing behind it, the idea of a human of this time bringing things to an end does feel a bit good, but it doesn't hit as hard when the character isn't really written up for that task. I think Kohaku could have gotten a little bit more. She has this plot point of being like a technopath, so maybe if she was the one to give Lola her new super anthem form, to play out the fact that Blade gives you your darkness form, that would have made everything a bit more oomph. But that's more of a feeling and less of a critique. What's an actual critique is that this game felt like shoving in 5 plot twists that feel super shallow. I think Gunvolt being missing is a good enough plot hook on its own, but this game went and had like 5 more. You got the Out of Gunvolt, Blade, Mithril, Asimov, and Cyborg Copen, and that's disregarding the time skip because that covers basically all of them. None of these things drastically change the context of these characters for the better, and hardly change the context of the story's core, it just changes the setting. The game does a pretty good job at hiding what exactly is going on for the most part, but those reveals only matter on your first playthrough. And that's not to say that a twist for twist's sake is inherently bad, it's just a one-trick pony and shouldn't be the backbone of your entire plot. At least not if you're not making an actual mystery to be solved, it shouldn't be. It was only when I was writing this that I tried to remember why the Mithril twist hit me so hard the first time, and it was because at that point in the story, and a little bit afterwards, you think all of the work that you did in Gunvolt 2 didn't matter. That happy ending you got her was taken away. But you play just a little bit more and the game tells you that, oh, everything's alright, this is a different timeline, don't worry about that. But by doing that, the game removes this idea of consequences, or the very least cause and effect, even though that's the point of a butterfly effect. It's all just a plot contrivance, which is every story in the world, but they all try to fool you that it isn't. The Copen and Mythil that we spent time with in the second game don't exist here, but they want to use them to evoke an emotion that will only work once, that they will take away minutes later, and if you start thinking about it, there's nothing else there. I don't want my mysteries to just surprise me, but to change the context of the world around it, to change the way that I think back on the story overall. But do you know what gives me the warm fuzzies when I think back onto it? The gameplay. It's great. This game is designed around Copen perfectly and it runs at a buttery smooth 60 frames once again. This means you're zipping and bipping around the stage at a high accuracy this game sometimes calls for. Or you're just showing off. The music, in my personal opinion, is better than ever. It's hard to classify Gunvolt music. It's a mix of chip, electronic, and some piano strings, I think. I'm not a musician. Either way, it hits just right in this game. And it still has the same problems as before because the idle songs have also gotten better. However, this game has a jukebox feature. You have to unlock each song by gaining 1,000 kudos in most levels like you always did. But this time, you can set what songs are allowed to play in the levels so you can choose your favorites, or maybe you just want to listen to the stage music the whole time. No, you're not choosing that one. Art and presentation in this game has a nice upgrade from its handheld roots. There's more animation and special moves, there's more effects, and that's really about all you can expect from this game moving forward. More so than being put on better hardware like a Switch and a PS4, it's the fact that this game is in a full 16:9 aspect ratio that can at least get to 720p. At the end of the day, it's a pixel game, so it's only going to be as good as its animation and its ideas that they can bring out themselves. This game has some odd choices like a broken down data store, but all of its backgrounds and its overlays and its transparencies, they all look so good. I wish I could have an animated background on Data Store Beta. Its colors are still a perfect 10 out of 10 for me. I love the way that this game looks, even if it could use some more aesthetic flair and a change of scenery. I think this game is a nice step in the right direction for this series moving forward, and forward it shall move because this week is the release of Luminous Avenger X2. That's right, there's no way I got this review out on time. It's definitely within this week. More than that though, they released 2 games before they even finished Gunvolt 3 that comes out this year as well. It's stacked and I'm waiting. But while I wait, let me wax on about the extras of this game and just focus on design, ease of play, and player growth because this game is very interesting in that regard. This is a bit where I talk about game design for the rest of the video and it takes way too long. I think this game is pretty neat and you should buy it whenever it's at an acceptable price range for yourself. This is where the real meat of the video and the video game begins because this game's main story is only 2 hours long. I think this game has the largest skill gap between its entry floor and its skill ceiling, and it's kind of amazing. Privation has always been great for getting into these games, and it's always been more effective for Copen than Gunvolt. In a boss-like setting, you're able to tag, and then you'll likely be able to take one Privation hit before you become vulnerable at the start of the game. But you can charge through invincibility frames, or you could just charge after you get your tag off. But more importantly, Copen doesn't have to wait for a bullet meter to reload even if he completely runs out of them. You are almost never in danger of taking direct damage. But even if you do take damage during the level, checkpoints heal you up and there are set heal drops in most of the levels anyway, meaning that you can use the busted darkness trigger as much as you want with little consequence because it will turn off by the time you hit the boss and there's a checkpoint waiting for you afterwards. Bosses are easier to kill because your EX weapons are way more effective. It's a lot easier to take out larger chunks of their health bars than in the past games, and that can lead to you killing them right after they get their super off if they don't have any invincibility frames for it. The level progression is also super generous. If you go through the first set of stages in a row, you get all of the boss weaknesses in order, except for the first one. This trick also works for the second set, but backwards, and you already start off with a weakness for that one. The level difficulty also gradually increases as you go through the game, as well as easing you into the harder stage challenges. As I stated before, none of your subroutines feel necessary to get, and most of them are super useful, like the one that restores health after you use your super, or overdrives that halves damage or gradually restores your health after you hit 1,000 kudos. Your lock-on can be extended, your EX weapons take up less meter, extra bullets. Nothing drastically changing the way you play the game or your movement options, but making everything easier for you. If you just want to play this game straight through and just experience the story, why? But you won't run into much problems. That is, until you get to the end where you run into the boss like Blade or Asimov. Just like in previous games, your difficulty spike comes from the form of enemies that ignore Pervasion. And then after dying again and again, it sets in on you. Oh, this game is super easy casually, but I'm also just kinda dog shit at it critically. It's when taking this game on critically and seriously where you'll find most of your meat here. Normally I wouldn't care about extra stuff like this, but this is the most interesting the gap has been to me in this series as a whole. Or maybe it's because this game's super short and there's not much in here to begin with, but that's neither here nor there. I'm on a roll here. Listen, this mark at the top of the start screen is a checklist of achievements before this game unlocks its first missions, where you can select any boss fight that you want. You get one for beating the main story, one for clearing all of the special missions, one for finding all of the emblems in the levels, and one for completing every stage in score attack mode including the special missions, maybe the boss rush. I got conflicting information and I couldn't beat one special mission in score attack to test it out, so you know, whatever. Anyway, after beating the story, you're most likely going to beat all the special stages next, and that's when the difficulty rises once again. These stages are remixed bite-sized versions of our main 6 stages with a slight difficulty increase. But the real challenge is the lack of checkpoints in the EX bosses that no longer take weakness damage, and most of their moves are altered and are more difficult to dodge. Next you would go after the emblems, and honestly they're kind of a pain in the ass. Each one gives you 500 kudos, and finding all of them gives you an extra 1,000, but maybe some of them, like in the medical center, you might need a guide to find. I might have needed a guide to find. And finally there's Score Attack. So Score Attack works like it did in the previous games. You don't have Pervasion and you're back to level 1, so your HP is pretty much set to 100, 140, somewhere around there. And you have none of your subroutines other than hover. Then going through these old levels reinforces the realization that your skills are indeed poor. You have a skill issue. Or at least I have a skill issue. Ooh, man, it was bad. With checkpoints you can get by during the stages, but bosses remind you how many attacks you weren't actually dodging. You can get by with strong EX weapons, but once you hit the special stages, it gets really rough. This leads us back into the difficulty spike that is all based on Pervasion. At worst in this game, you will be bashing your head against the last 2 bosses. With Score Attack, you're bashing your head against entire stages, and as I said before, you can restart a stage before your death and keep all of the levels, but either way you're still grinding it out, whether that be through health or actually getting the skills to beat it. And it's at this point do you bring up the question, how does the game promote you to try and get better? And that is with the ranking system that doesn't unlock anything at all. It's broken into 3 just like before, but this time instead of affecting your multiplier in stage, they have different multipliers at the end of each stage. But now more than ever, I feel like each of them have an incremental feeling in getting you better at the game one at a time. To get the best score you need to attack enemies. You get extra points for killing them while tagged, and you get even more points while killing them with an EX weapon. Kill multiple enemies in a row without planting your feet on the ground and you will gradually raise your bonus score. You're going to want to go out of your way to find those emblems, and when you do end up fighting the boss, EX weapons don't give you any extra kudos, so that promotes you into fighting them normally and getting you used to dodging all of their attacks. Gutless mode allows you to keep your kudos even when hit, so it's perfect for learning the level. It also allows those overdrive defensive subroutines to put in work the whole stage without worrying about them turning off either. But even with all of that, you're probably going to hover around A, maybe an S rank if you really try your best. So then you move over to Caution, where it takes 3 hits before your kudos reset to 0. As the game states, you start to focus on your play a bit more, and 3 hits is a perfect starting point of focus because that's generally about the amount of attacks you can take and Score Attack before you bite it. So then you hit Fearless, where 1 hit will reset your kudos. You have to focus more and you have to play better. You even have an overdrive subroutine that ties kudos to attack power that only works on Fearless to nudge you in that direction. But what if you don't want to worry about a high combo and rank? You just want to focus on not taking hits, the main focus to just beat Score Attack mode. There's a subroutine for that too. Heaven or Hell forces your HP to 100 and removes Pervasion. The trade-off is that your kudos gain goes up substantially during the stage, and unlike Score Attack, you keep all of your subroutines. Even on Gutless, if you play well enough, you can get an S+ rank. However, even with a higher defense and health regen, if you aren't careful, you could still carelessly die. You can even get enough points before the boss, and if you're worried about dying, you can cast them in. However, that means you have to play well enough to get those kudos back in the first couple of phases of the fight as well. Kudos is the perfect way to gauge your play without punishing you with death or even damage. I do my first recordings on Gutless for readability, and damage always sneaks up on me. I've played tons of games with different modes and different settings, but I don't think I've seen a system that's put its lowest and highest levels so far apart yet so close together. The fact that you have control over your Pervasion doesn't make it just an HP toggle. The fact that your subroutines play into your kudos gain make it more than just a passive buff. If a player is good with their fundamentals and only has trouble with taking hits, they're going to beat a boss and stages in just about the same time as someone who is way more advanced and takes way less hits, and that gap fascinates me. That being said, those cool subroutines I talked about, you still have to kind of grind for anyway, so you know, but hey man, play the game to get better at the game? Of course. Sure, why not? I'll try it. At the end of the day, all I'm really saying is that anyone can get a nice experience out of this game that they want, and I think that's really neat. I have a few more critiques, but they don't matter. It's too late for this game and the next one's already coming out. That last bit turned out to be longer and shorter than I was expecting, so I don't know how to feel about that. So if you stuck around through all of it, thank you for humoring my self-indulgence. Please like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends, play Gunvolt. All of that is just to say that if you're the type of person to just sit around and try to better yourself at a game, there's almost nothing as accommodating as this entire series, and that's why I recommend it. X2 is on the horizon and I'm excited once again, so hopefully by then, obviously a little after because I have to play the game. Mata ao. Os. We've finally reached the end of our Gunvolt games as of now. X2 has finally released and I spent days grinding away at it trying to form an opinion. I didn't look much at pre-release stuff, but now that I have the game in my hands I can't help but have a lot to say about it. So how about we saw right through these pleasantries and start our review of Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger X2. So, what do you do when you've beaten the bad guy and you finally obtained peace? That's right, after killing Demerzel, we also defeated outstanding racism as well. So what do? Well, we tinker with weird things we find on the ground, of course. Copen has found a strange blaster rifle that doesn't seem to be from his world. Kohaku tells him to take a break, but before he can, a wormhole opens up and it sucks him, Lola, and Kohaku, dropping them off into a barren wasteland of a world where humans have gone extinct and the only ones left are worker droids trying to restore the planet to something habitable. The three are found by a worker known as Null, and after several months stranded, Copen makes his way to a large tower in the middle of the desert to find answers on how to return home. And that's where our game starts us. Our intro stage is the desert. Sporting a brand new look, the only thing Copen is missing is a cape to throw away, but someone else has got that covered. Along with his new look comes a brand new ability for this game, Pervasion is a thing of the past. Now Lola has a healing ability that she can use at any time. The price is cashing in your kudos you've gained and resetting your combo score to 0. But that's not the only, or dare I say biggest change of the game. As you run through the stage, you'll notice that Copen no longer carries his laser gun. He's turned that random rifle he found into a new saw-bladed weapon for melee-focused ground combat. You can hold the saw out for an active hurt box, you have a 3-hit combo that brings out a giant wheel that can even block some projectiles, and you even have a ground dash attack. Your ground dash is even able to push back blocks and enemies to give yourself some room. So you might be asking, where did his old gameplay go? It's still here, but you have to work for it. Copen still has his lock-on tags normally, but this time they only work while he's in the air, and he does get his old homing shots back, but you might notice that Copen can only air dash once, no matter what. He can still bound off walls, but in open areas he becomes pretty vulnerable in the air. To return Copen back to his old self, you need to reach 1,000 kudos, and he'll have a similar system to when he did before. Bullets are gone and are replaced by a meter that slowly drains after your first hit, taking away chunks with each dash you perform, but refills after hitting any surface or enemy like in the old games. There aren't any alternate difficulties in this game, so no matter what, you won't be losing kudos when you take a hit in normal play, so in theory it's easier to reach 1,000 than ever before. And that in essence breaks down your way of play. Grounded combat with break shift in your razor wheel, and after hitting 1,000 kudos, aerial combat with your bullet shift and your homing blades. If you're like me, you probably haven't come to terms with this by the time you've reached the first boss, but maybe forging on ahead, things will become a little bit clearer. You find this old busted up robot in front of the tower, but it suddenly comes to life and has a strong resemblance to someone. I can't put my finger on it, but he is a pushover all the same. After the battle, we find out that Kohaku and Null have followed us, and the tower seems to magically open up at the presence of Kohaku. Seeing as everyone is already here, they take a walk inside and we've now reached our gameplay loop. We may have gotten into this tower pretty easily, but it seems that if we want to go up, we'll have to find 2 sets of keys. So it's time to pick our stages and fight our bosses for them. You only get 2 picks at the start, making things kind of barren for our options, but our stages are more varied than ever. This tower is full of biorooms that replicate many different environments. Our first 2 options are between a volcano block that rushes you to the end with giant boulders and hot molten. If it still appears in a cave, does that turn into lava or is it still magma? What technically counts as the Earth's crust? Anyway, our other location is the jungle block, full of beautiful waterfalls and vines that impede your path forward. But getting 2 keys is simple and we have to make our way up the tower. On foot, because God forbid someone put an elevator in this place. We have to make sure that the patch is safe for Kohaku and Null, so Copen and Lola go through first, but are stopped just before the end by that odd robot we met outside. Ypsilon. Blah blah blah, I will surpass you, blah blah blah, how could I lose, blah blah blah, mother! And he's gone. Weird how he can talk now, still reminds me of somebody. Anyway, after all of that, we get another door, oh boy. So before we run through the next set of bosses, let's talk about our home. We aren't home anymore, are we? Let's talk about the tower menu. The basic menu has been cleaned up. Mission and talk are where you expect them to be, but music has been moved over here as well. All of your subroutines and main options are in the start menu at all times now. You can check on and set shortcuts for your EX weapons, you can buy and set your subroutines, they even have this fun graphic for your overdrive ones. They still work on just buying them with the credits that you earned in the game like last time, so make sure you pick up the ones such as draws in dropped enemy credits to you and gives credits based on your completion rank. Also the Boomeraiser. You can check your stats. Your health increase is a subroutine this time that's on from the beginning, so if you want to run the game with low health, you can do so just by turning it off. Our main options are pretty much the same. You have a manual telling you how to do all of your moves and how scoring works, basically doing my job for me. You can set your display settings like resolution, and I'm assuming only a PS5 and Steam function, you get to set your FPS options to 60 or 120. Don't have a 120 monitor, game won't let me see it. You can set your buttons in-game, but a big difference is that you can technically map them twice. You can change what they do in-game, or you can change how your controller interprets them. I'm playing on Steam this time, so it might just be a Steam feature, but who's to say on this one? The hover subroutine turned into an option this time, so it's now moved to the option menu. I recommend turning it off, Even after playing through the whole game with it on, it felt way better to have it off when I went through the second time. You can also change the air dash options. I don't really know what this one does. I feel like I was able to do most of the things I wanted in both modes, which included an air dash with multiple angles, but that might have happened after I made the switch originally, and Gunvolt 2 says more precise, so that's the one I went with. You finally have sound settings in there, kinda... You can set the volume for everything comparatively, but you can't silence any of them, so... For someone like me, this still would make editing easier, but I don't have any of the music this time, so... At least you can hear dialogue better, I guess. And speaking of dialogue, we have our first ever English voiceover cast for this game series, and it's good.
A secret room?
I guess. I'm not the type of person who cares about things like this, but some people do, so I'm glad they got it. More than that, I'm glad they did a really good job. Special shoutouts to Yuma Uchida and Alejandro Saab, who are respectively the Japanese and English voices of both Copen and Ypsilon. Anytime someone has to do double duty on the same voice but different, it's always a fun time to see. Or listen. And with that out of the way, we can get back to beating up bosses. We have the laboratory block that is full of lasers that we can use our buzzsaw to turn off some of them and outrace the other ones. We have the industrial block that is full of spikes and explosives in many different varieties. An arctic block that has harsh winds, slippery floors, and more spikes. And finally, a space block that has lowered gravity, meaning you can just skip most of it if you feel like it. I'm kidding. Mostly. They know well enough to put you into closed, tight spaces. Most of the time. As we go through these levels, we get a bit more character and plot. You find out that every robot is born with a mission, or a duty that they have to fulfill, but Null doesn't seem to have one of those, and it causes her a bit of melancholy. Ypsilon goes and wakes up his mother, Computer, who has been in sleep mode this whole time. It seems the arrival of Kohaku has put more than the tower back in motion, and Mother is very interested in her. After collecting all of our keys and unlocking our way up once again, Ypsilon ambushes us and steals Kohaku away, adding another thing to do before we can get back home. Since we're nearing the end, let's talk about our EX weapons for a half second. I'm not the type to really go into Mega Man-esque EX weapons, special weapons, because at the end of the day I end up trying to use most of them myself throughout my run, and I do generally like all of them. They all have different functions and utilities, and some are outright broken. I can't believe they brought back a time slow mechanic in this day and age. The big change to your EX weapons in this game, however, is that they have their own weapon meters. I like this, but I kinda wish that they'd still refuel even if they weren't selected. They could've just, I don't know, increased the refuel time if they aren't on immediately. But that being said, we really don't have much to do. We have one lead-up stage that uses all the tricks of the previous stages, and that kind of kicks off our boss rush, but not really. Damn, it really is 0-2 in here, isn't it? Then you have your rematch with Ypsilon, the real boss rush, and then your final climactic battle with the Mother Computer. If this recap seems a little shorter and less messed up stuff is happening, it's because this game just came out and I'm unwilling to spoil it for you. That's what timestamps are for. Now, it's not like there's much to spoil with this story. Its plot is a tool so we can have our varied stages, but it's weird because we get transported to this whole other world that has nothing to do with anything and we just run up this tower. The stage artist really got to show off this time, but I feel like the writing is a bit more honed in as it always is. I have nothing to say about the bosses because they all have the same purpose, but with quirky personalities. There's a whole revenge bit thing that rings kinda hollow when you fight the two in question again later. Lots of connections that just seem kinda hollow. Anyway, it has the same needlessly graphic moments, hollow twists, everything that you've seen before. We can cut back in now because I find it funny that people aren't feeling this story this time around because its shallowness is worn on its sleeves a bit more, but it's pretty much standard fare for the series as a whole. To put things in perspective, we open up with the phrase, Copen has obtained peace, and it's not ironic in any way, shape, or form. The plot was gone at frame 1. No one had an actual character arc that needed a continuation. There's no bad guy that could have been waiting in the background of that last plot either. I was on board for some lighthearted nonsense, and that's what this game gave me. The game's saving grace is that it isn't a mess like Gunvolt 2, and it doesn't undercut itself like X1, even if I like that story just a bit more. It does, however, do something different that I think is kind of annoying. This game, like the main Gunvolt series, has a secret true ending. Much like Gunvolt 1, it hides its secret ending behind its collectibles, the emblems. Then there's the secret area in the final mission that is real annoying part because it's a hole in the wall that is hard to find, and through that you have to unlock and beat hard mode to get it. More on hard mode later. For now, let's talk about art and presentation. They really went all in on this game. Because of its setting, or maybe the other way around, the art design gets to be way more varied. You have all of these different locations with excellent art and backgrounds. Colors, once again, 10 out of 10. Cut-ins are now animated. The screen has been pulled out just slightly to give you more sight of things ahead of you. Aesthetically, this game is like a mix between Mega Man X4 and Zero 2, and that is not a bad choice. The music is once again just as good as always. The stage themes are energetic and fun, and while I wasn't all that into the idol songs when they were first posted on NT Create's YouTube channel, they play way better in game and I've come around on them quite a lot. In the last video, this is pretty much where I gave my verdict on the game and went off into game design and what I liked about it. I can't do that this time because of the big changes to this game, and while some of them are interesting, I feel like a lot of them have their own problems and feel like they don't really understand what worked well in the previous game. So this section probably matters the most, but I will speak out on something that I've noticed. If you're the type of person that enjoys that tactile feeling of your button presses doing immediate damage, you might just like this game the most in this series. It's a shame that the first area in the game can easily show off all of my issues, but here we are. So first off is taking damage. Second is moving through levels with your air dash. Third is getting points. And fourth is your razor wheel. So basically criticisms with the entire game. This is going to be a lot, so let's start off with our first problem the game presents us with, and that is free healing. I think this is a step too far for getting casuals into this game. It may bank your kudos to keep you from your aerial mode, but it really takes away the idea of learning in this game and puts all of the weight completely on if you care about your points or not. For Gunvolt the character, Prevasion was always a way of switching between offense and defense and becoming vulnerable to taking damage for the sake of doing damage, but for Copen it always worked in his offensive favor. Prevasion was a safety net, but it still had its holes in it for you to take damage that mattered. In Gunvolt 2, you had ways to heal yourself, but not in the original X. You had to rely on health pickups, which aren't in this game at all, but the healing checkpoint system did make a return. So while taking damage really doesn't matter all that much in stages still, in the original X, you still had to sit with that damage during bosses in your base toolkit. Even if you could keep recharging through attacks, you still had to be aware of what was going on. That's not the case for this game, where the only thing you really have to pay attention to is your health bar. Now that I think about it, this invalidates the level up system entirely. This gets even more out of hand when you include the Hyper Guard subroutine that makes Copen take only 1 point of damage when he is standing completely still. All of these systems just reduce the normal defensive form of gameplay into not interacting with the game at all. Next, let's talk about how air dashing was changed. You can only air dash once in this game until you reach 1,000 kudos and you enter overdrive. One of the criticisms that I often hear with Copen is that his air dashes made it feel like you didn't interact with the stages enough. That this game holding you back is forcing you to interact with the stages more, but I don't agree with any of those criticisms at all. Copen having one air dash just means I need to jump a bit more than I did in the previous game to move through the levels and not care about their stage design. Like all of Copen's gameplay since he was first introduced, Copen interacts with the level the most when he is forced into tight, confined spaces, and his air dash is at its best when it's extremely vertical and level design. Something this game still does, so I don't see why they hold you back as much as they do. In fact, the game goes out of its way to discourage locking onto targets outside of overdrive so much that it's worthless to tag unless you really have to. That's why I recommended turning off auto hover. It just leaves you in a vulnerable state that has zero advantages, and the press of the jump button can be the difference between getting hit or not. I can get holding Copen back, but they should have at least let you chain together enemy air dashes. So now let's move on to talking about getting into overdrive bullet shift mode the first place, so let's talk about the point system. So all of your normal basic attacks will give you points. Anything you do with your razor wheel, any of your homing shots, they will net you normal points. But the fastest way to get to 1,000 points is with your razor bonus. It's activated by killing enemies in quick succession with your normal razor wheel, whether it's the hold, A dash attack or your 3-hit combo. As long as you aren't locked on, it will count towards that bonus. EX weapons do nothing for your base score, but they do grant you a 20-point aerial bonus when you're locked on, which is 10 points better than your normal aerial lock-on bonus. When you do eventually unlock your overdrive, your aerial bonuses can be comboed and stacked just like in the last game, gradually increasing as you keep comboing without touching the ground. So the real problem is that your Razor bonus sucks. It's a set 30 points that is based on an invisible timer that counts down from kill to kill. Playing through the first time, I had no idea why I'd get it sometimes, and other times I didn't. I'd like some indicator under your kudos bonus for the timing. But the thing that frustrates me the most is that the old EX aerial bonus is so obviously better, but is locked behind until you reach overdrive in the first place. If your Razor bonus is going to be timed, how about you give that an increased combo bonus as well? Getting 1000 points in stage isn't that difficult because the emblems work as they did before, 500 points each. Oddly, the 1000 point bonus is missing, but for what it's worth, it does become a problem later on. Finally, we come to the Razor Wheel itself. It's too damn slow and too short range to be all that useful. It's not that bad one-on-one in levels because the second hit of your combo pushes back a little bit, but for more than one enemy, or when the enemy is close enough, or they have a ranged option, or when they have something that lets them move in, it's very clumsy. Your third hit may be able to block some projectiles, but that once again puts you in a situation where you can't move. I really don't see why they give you an active hitbox just for holding it out. It's used for one level gimmick and only works on one enemy, so it all feels like a weird justification for it. I don't understand why there's so much ending lag for the last hit of your combo. You can deal with the range a bit with the Boomer Razor that gives you a nice ranged option, but now we're back at Gunvolt territory where some of your subroutines should be in your base abilities. Writing this out, I think I can also say that for the credit subroutines too. But I think the absolute worst thing for your Razor Wheel is that it's practically useless on most of the bosses in this game. How can the main way the game pushes you to attack during the level be your worst option in your bosses? It's not even like Overdrive is a better alternative either, because the boss design of these fights hasn't changed from the first game. Every boss has an air option that is easier to handle when you're on the ground. And going back to level design, that also includes enemy placement, which is still the exact same as last time as well. Enemies are stretched apart horizontally and vertically, perfect for air dashing back to back, and awful for your base Razor Wheel. I feel like time slow was added to make your Razor Wheel worth using, and in raw damage per second, it is, but it isn't enough to matter for casual players, and not polished enough to be a main option either way. I feel like they made these changes just for the sake of change itself without thinking them through enough. I think a melee option is fine, but it needs to be useful in boss fights. It needs to let you be able to move freely in these speedy and hectic battles. Taking away multiple air dashes needs to actively hold you back in a way that matters, but still supports a natural playstyle. I see all of these places where I could have an option in the last game, but it just isn't here in this one unless I'm halfway through the level and have played well enough up to that point. So this is the part where I talk about difficulty, and that's a hard subject to get into. Everyone has their own views on what's difficult or too easy, and it gets kinda messy, but I can at least talk about the things that I don't like about this game's hard mode. I don't like the removal of gameplay mechanics and abilities and level ups. I can get removing infinite healing, that makes sense, but I don't like the fact that it also removes your subroutines. If you're able to get 1000 kudos in hard mode that removes all of the emblems in the stage, you deserve to be rewarded more than just a bullet chip that isn't even useful on bosses, which is the only thing that is really difficult in them in the first place. It would give you a reason to try and interact with the stages so you can give yourself an easier time with the boss with the overdrive buffs that you normally get, and if they wanted more challenge, they could mitigate their effects instead of just removing them outright. It also removes the idea of leveling up, so it doesn't even matter in this mode either, so what's the point? It also removes the incentive to get all of your upgrades in normal mode because you've most likely only gotten about 5 out of the 20-ish number that is there in the first place, and they don't really help you learn the game any better like in the last game where they just made things easier for you, so what's the point in those too? The only real incentive of hard mode is to see the story and maybe look at the hard mode bosses. I think the biggest issue for me is that hard mode still gives you lives. That's not a form of difficult to me. That's not difficult, it's a punishment. Those things aren't the same in my eyes. Lives just get in the way of you learning to handle the part in games that is actually giving you trouble. So a way to break their system is to go back to the space block. It has the easiest extra lives to get, and 2 of them being pretty easy and another one hiding behind an EX weapon spot with the Gatling gun. So once you get the lives, you can exit the stage and it will be saved and kept until you lose one and the game saves again. You can farm here, and if you can get all of them, you can hit retry and farm as much as you want. Retry eats up 1 of your lives, but you will be getting 2 at a higher rate. Make sure not to hit restart. Restart just starts you off with whatever lives that you currently have until you reach lower than 2, in which it will just go back to 2. But whenever you've gained as many lives as you want, whenever you reached a challenge and you're about to run out of them, just exit out of the game without saving from the start menu and go back to the title screen from there. That's just a workaround for a problem that doesn't need to exist in the first place, and something I didn't know about before I beat it, so I wasted a lot of my time. At the end of the day, you still have a problem of wasting your time. My biggest frustration with hard mode is that it makes X's 1 learning curve feel like a fluke in terms of game design. And yeah, I get that that can happen sometimes, but it stings, you know? This hard mode is essentially a modified version of X1's score attack mode, but the score attack mode didn't modify anything. You could run through the stage normally and practice score attack in a multitude of ways to make yourself ready for it. The only thing score attack in the last game hit for me were boss fight missions, but this one just gives you them outright to practice on, but the bosses are modified in hard mode, so there's not much practice to be had in the first place. The game can't expect me to practice on old bosses when they have new modified moves and just sub them in myself mentally. Right? A sneaky double attack makes sense, sure, that's fine, but sometimes they just punk you out because you know the old boss fight well enough that they get a cheap shot in on the new one, and that's annoying. Some of these new boss fights are just annoying. Why does Ypsilon remove my reticle from him? That's the only way I can attack. That's not hard, that's just frustrating. Now, I wouldn't say that I'm great at video games. After this past week, I wouldn't even say that I'm good at video games. But I did manage to get an X rank on the normal Ypsilon boss fight. It took me another 30 minutes to even beat the hard mode version of that boss, and that is just a boss stage. It took me hours to beat the final boss that has a short stage that only takes seconds, and a 2-phase boss fight on top of that. The live system is just there to shoot your nerves and mess with your muscle memory. Putting the learning curve aside, I feel like the last game was the best of Gunvolt in where you can set your own difficulty with your own stipulations. In this game you can kinda do that, but the 2 modes that you have are a super easy mode where you can heal all you want, and that is a skill that is never able to be turned off, or a hard mode where you have absolutely no options at all, and that's sad. There's no real middle ground, because if you play the game without healing, then you realize, oh wait, this game's actually pretty hard though. Just saying something bad is the lowest form of criticism, and the step above that is breaking down why you think something is bad. But leaving it at that isn't as satisfying as it could be, so if you're going to break something down, you should have to give something to help build it back up again. Not to say that I can design a video game, but having more ideas is better than having none. So here are some hawk recommendations. Also, like, you can use some of these for Gunvolt 3, like, don't take me back to Gunvolt 2, don't make me have to synthesize items again, I don't want to do that, you fixed it. As a core design feature, bring back the kudos modes, or at least some form of them through subroutines like you already have in the game. If you don't want everything to matter but points, make them actually different levels with, like, unlimited healing on Gutless, Provision on Caution, and nothing for Fearless, right? Do something like that. Again, if that's too much, find a way to work it into the subroutine system like you already have with some of them. Let Copen dash again after hitting an enemy. Without that, his air dash feels kinda useless in normal stages and enemies. I think the level design is fine as it is, rewarding you for better play, but some of them can be a bit too open, like the gravity stage in the beginning. The Razor Wheel is too slow and clunky to use. Its range is too short for how fast some of the enemies move. Movement options outside of it are not quick enough, and it's worthless for these highly mobile and aerial bosses. I used the Razor Wheel in normal stages not because I wanted to, but because I had to, and it wasn't fun. Just go all in on emulating the Z-Saber like you already have and give us more aerial and grounded combos and techniques. Keep us moving more, and if you want to mess with enemy placement like the ground dash does, at least keep us in range to keep attacking. And if you want to keep the big saw wheel, which I also think is cool, just turn it into an active charging hitbox like how the Doomsday detonator works in this game already. Charge it up, make it big, and fire it off. That would more than make up for having to make us stand still if it still does damage while charging, and having us jump and dash out of it for a quick evasion. If you honestly combine the Z-Saber and the X-Buster into one weapon, that would truly be interesting on its own. At the very least, let us have a constant close range and far range weapon like in the Zero games at all times. Once again, obtaining subroutines took another step forward with the Credit Edition's subroutines, so just make that a part of the base game. If you get a reward for good ranks, even casuals will end up caring about them, and make it easier to get more subroutines before you're able to beat the game as well. I know I said I got like 5 out of 20, but half of that was to get more money, so snake eating its own tail, you know? And I know I spoke on this before, but don't, big quotation marks, force people to play them for more story. We've left that behind. Don't bring that back. It's not worth it. You'll just make people end up resenting the story that they have, whether they get it or not, and that's not worth it. For a game series based around score, if people like it, they will replay it anyway, no matter what. I personally don't even think the story's good enough for a hard mode playthrough in the first place, but I know some people out there do care. Don't take away things they worked for, like subroutines, for this sense of challenge that doesn't help them learn the game. It's not that I'm against harder modes, I just think that taking things away isn't that fun. If you want that bare bones nothing only at the base challenge, just bring back Score Attack. You have all of these subroutines that some of them should be in the base game. Some of them completely ruin the engagement, some of them that actually help you cost way too much money, and then in the end you just end up throwing all of them away, so what's the point? But I guess all of this is my real gripe and frustration with this game overall. I see why they wanted all of these things, but when put together they all just clash and we end up with this game that feels confused in what it's trying to imitate. And I know what it's trying to imitate, and I know what it's trying to move away from, and this game doesn't understand the difference between those two ideas, and it's currently stuck between them. I feel like this game looked at Gunvolt 3 as an inspiration, and I hope that it somehow missed the mark at what that game is trying to do. But this spin-off series has a chance at being something truly special if it wants to continue forward with these ideas. I hope this is just growing pains of a change that what X becomes next is something very special. True first world problems when the video game series that you like has a new one and it disappoints you in almost every way. Well, what are you gonna do? Us, YouTube, it's time to finally finish off these Gunvolt Chronicles. Did I already make that joke? Don't worry, it'll come back later. Gunvolt 3 is finally released, and after 2 spin-off games at that. So, is it time for Gunvolt's return to form? No, not in the slightest. But stick around to find out why. Last time on Azura's Striker Gunvolt, Gunvolt 2, our hero Gunvolt and anti-hero Copen managed to save the latter's little sister as she fused with Joel, Gunvolt's companion, to regain her psychic Septima powers, but this caused her to lose her memories of both boys. Having nothing left to fight for, the two boys go their separate ways, leaving the girl to live out a normal life. But behind the scenes, Copen's maid Nori and Gunvolt's communication assistant Xiao had made a deal to seal the girl's psychic abilities inside a locket to keep them out of the hands of Gunvolt or any other ability-holding adept for fear of them gaining too much power. You catch all of that? Good, forget about it, none of that matters. We open up on a mysterious girl looking down on the Sumeragi Futures Institute. She works with the group Shadow Yakumo that has ties with Sumeragi by being the ones that make their glaives, specially made swords that contain a person's septima, their psychic abilities, and are able to hold them back. It's also their job to, big quotation marks here, look after them. It's their battle priestess's job, Kirin, to infiltrate their building and find out what they're hiding this time. As we get started with our opening stage, we find out that Kirin plays like a mixture of Gunvolt and both versions of Copen. She has an actual sword this time, and her basic attacks are much faster and longer reaching than Copen's were in X2. Like Gunvolt, she attacks her opponents, but unlike his darts, her talismans reduce their health and boost your attack. If I had to put it into fighting game terms, she gives her opponents gray health and you attack them to cash it out. Her other ability, which only activates after the starter level, is her Arc Chain. After tagging an opponent, she can warp towards them for an attack. Depending on if you press the right or left on the D-pad, she will warp in front or behind them. Honestly, you only mostly have to worry about getting behind them, because you'll generally be in front of them with just a normal tap. But we can get into more detail about that later. As we reach the end of the level, we run into a similar but different situation from the first game. Man, this guy's pompous too. Anyway, we run into this giant monster. Dragon? After we beat it, they turn into Gunvolt. It seems that his powers suddenly went out of control one day, and with no choice he surrendered himself to Sumeragi. In the meantime, they siphoned off his access energy to power the country, but that energy contained dragon radiation. It causes other septimal powers to go out of control, just like his did. It's now up to him and Kirin to hunt down the out-of-control adepts, except for one thing. Gunvolt turned into a dog. You start off with one stage to start from. It's a tutorial, it's fine. You start off with 4 stages to choose from: a city being terrorized on Christmas night, an arcade city based on Kowloon, a shipping facility next to the ocean, and a high-rise, high-tech temple. After being in the post-apocalypse twice in the past 2 games, it's nice to get back to some futuristic cityscapes. However, you are forced to pick the Christmas stage first, because it serves as a tutorial for your new Arc Chain, and for Gunvolt as a whole. Gunvolt isn't his own character in this game, he's more like a super mode for Kirin. You have an energy meter next to your health bar that fills up as you attack. Once you reach 100%, you hold down ZL or ZR, and you'll transform into Gunvolt. He's practically in his Anthem powered up form from the previous games, so that means he has infinite dashing and air jumps. You attack the same way by tagging and using your flash field, but this time your flash field will protect you when it's not activated, much like Copen's used to work. Speaking of Copen, Gunvolt also stole his tag dash as well. You dash into enemies and tag them, but Gunvolt will dash through them to do damage. He can also use the Arc Chain, but his spits out lightning that crosses the screen, and unlike Kirin's talismans, his tags always stays active, so he pretty much shreds through bosses' health. His meter is also a timer that naturally runs out, but you do have an ability to charge and keep it steady while it's standing still. It runs out a little faster by attacking, and it runs out a lot more when you take damage and use Pervasion. However, depending on how high your percentage is when you summon him, he'll have a different special move to finish off enemies, but Kirin doesn't heal while he's out, so you do have to be careful about when you run out of his meter. Anthem makes a return because it has to, I guess. Who cares about what happened in the last game? The writers clearly don't. Anyway, when Kirin dies, there's a chance that the Muse, Morpho, will revive her, but they will return as an even more powerful Gunvolt until you reach the gate for the next area, or beat the boss. I don't know when you died. We battle through these areas and slowly defeat our bosses and add more people to our team. BB, Shiron, Apollo, and Cayman join our little dragon hunting squad, and we work together with Sumeragi to clear up this crisis. This only comes about because unlike child soldier Gunvolt over there, Kirin doesn't kill her enemies. An interesting character trait, but mostly just a plot device. Either way, with the harem of cliché boys behind us, we can now tackle anything that comes our way. Like a set of missiles heading straight for Japan. With the help of Chiron's tracking and Gunvolt's OP broken powers, he teleports them to the missiles to stop the threat head on. There we find the mastermind behind the attack, Zed Omega. I mean, Zed. They never say the Omega part out loud, or even reference it. I don't know why it's there. He's an adept whose power of nuclear fusion could rival even Gunvolt's electricity. He's also had a hand in awakening the dragons with his Muse-like partner who's also been keeping an eye on us. He tells us that his organization, Atoms, has arrived in Japan and that these unarmed missiles were just a means of transportation to get past the country's barrier. After a quick fight, he departs, and our only clue on their location is that his people have started searching for the original items on which the glaives were based, the binding brands. Trust me when I say that the story makes this sound better than I'm presenting it, but it's not that much better. So, now that we have more stages and 4 more bosses to tackle, how about we talk about home base? You'll have all of your old amenities that have always been there, like the chat function that lets you talk to your gathered party members. You can check your special skills. They don't change, so maybe some DLC will switch it out like they did with X2. I wouldn't know, I didn't buy that. I'm still waiting for my physical release. The game manual is also still here, lets you understand all of the game mechanics and buttons and what they do. You can manually save, even though the game does still have autosaving. Options are back and you can change all of your buttons once again, or maybe you want to change if your command dash works. The sound options have also returned. They're the same as last time. It's annoying still. Story mode options return once again. You can turn the story mode off completely. You can have your voices on and off completely and still have the text. You can change the window transparency and the portrait transparency. I'd say they're better than ever this time, and it's especially helped by the fact that this has a fully English voice cast. So you can really turn off the portraits and just get the whole experience, or turn off everything and still get it. As for our last 2 options, they are another game mechanic. Gunvolt can create physical illusions of people he's met before. Combined with Kieran's talismans, they can hold a form long enough to be used, or at the very least, that's the in-game story explanation. It's why Morpho is back. As for a gameplay aspect, they both come in 2 types, active and passive. Active pulses range from doing damage, to shielding, or even healing. Kieran has to activate these during battle, and they recharge over time. Passive ones are, as they say on the tin, always active. They range from attack buffs, extra jumps, defense, healing over time, and extra score. They all cover a wide range of abilities. You can equip 4 active ones at a time. As for passive ones, you are only able to equip 1 at the start, but with leveling up, you unlock more slots. There's also an in-game music slot for idle songs, and you can block out the ones that you don't want to play. That seems backwards, but sure, why not? You get these image pulses by finding tokens during the levels. The first one's free, but you have to find the rest in pairs. You get the bottom one first and the top one second so you can keep track of when you've missed one, but only when you've found one because the indicator disappears for some dumb reason. After you've completed a level and collected your tokens, you get a flashy gacha-like screen and you get a random assortment of passive and active abilities. Each level has their own pulls, and when you pull a double you get cash back depending on the rarity, which there are only 2 of, 1 star and 3 stars. You use that cash to level up your 3-star rarity image pulses to power them up more. A 3-star image pulse will start off worse than a 1-star, but you level them up 3 times to get a better result. Think of 1 stars as a free trial to what you want to get. But with that out of the way, we got 4 more levels to take on and 4 more bosses to beat. Our next locations are an harsh excavation in the desert, an abandoned oil refinery. We return back to the shipping facility, but this time there seems to be elemental traps, and finally a mystic forest where you have to take out your enemies without being sighted. I'll also use this time to bring up the fact that we aren't the only ones with a revive mechanic. As I said before, our enemies have a diva of their own, and they'll randomly revive one of the bosses that we've been fighting this whole time, a Jean. She may revive bosses to full, but they come back with way lower defense. You do like triple the damage, it's fine. And now on to the final gameplay aspect I've yet to mention. What do you get for beating bosses in this game? Kieran doesn't get special talismans like Gunvolt's darts, or even special weapons like Copen. She's the true Zero of this series, so she gets special moves for defeating bosses. A ranged talisman shot, an anti-air-to-air command normal, an invincible charge slash, and a dedicated falling attack. Honestly, when it comes to basic combat, she feels the best in this series to me because of these additions. When it comes to combat, Gunvolt and Copen are more get the lock on and then you just purely focus on dodging while you let your auto attack do all the work. Kirin is that active attack style that I've been waiting for, and I've really enjoyed it. Now obviously our bosses escape with their treasures and they take over the media tower, you know that level all the way from the first game, and create the Sunrise Palace. A giant sandcastle that puts all the level gimmicks together as we run through and refight our previous bosses, and some special cameos. No real boss rush in this game, at least not for the story, but we have 3 more levels before our rematch with Zed, and let's end the story synopsis here. I went back and I saw the call out I made in Gunvolt 2 about this game having 3 playable characters, and I technically wasn't all that wrong if Gunvolt's just going to steal Copen's moves, but I was wrong. If we're just going to compare it to 2, they've sacrificed characters for levels, and that's not inherently a bad thing, but more so than making compromises, it feels like this game as a whole just kinda gave up on certain aspects of this series. Like always, let's start with the story. I feel like the only way for this plot to not rub you the wrong way is if you didn't care about anything that happened or anyone in the previous game, so you know, basically the writers themselves. So once again, our old characters are thrown into the trash, no one really has a character or has a character arc, there's way too much writing for the amount of nothing that's actually being said, and because they finally decided to stop being edgy, they also kinda come off as needlessly sappy. Now let's try to get to the bits of the story that I skipped or slightly glazed over because it's either a bunch of jokes or a plot contrivance. So first things first, the plot takes place decades in the future, so all of our old characters can be tossed aside and forgotten. It's vague, but even if it's just 2 decades later, Copen is now much too old to participate in this plot that revolves around teenagers. But hey, maybe he's turned himself into an internally youthful robot in this timeline too. Second, Gunvolt turns into a dog because jokes, I guess. If you actually look at his design, he seems to be modeled after the mythical beast Kirin. You know what Kirin is probably named after. They take the form of this chimera-like deer-dragon hybrid, and I guess they stylize it as a dog this time. I've seen the Kirin be related to lightning before, and it's also related to the yellow dragon, which is just an offshoot of the 4 beasts, which is another reference that Gunvolt likes to make. And you know, background details like this are fine and fun, but you know, just like bosses being named after cars or being based off Arcana, it's just kinda cute. There's nothing inherently bad here, but there's also not really much inherently good. Just some funny dog jokes from here and there. Speaking of Kirin herself, as a character, she's fine. A bit more snarky than Gunvolt, but just as bland as a character in introspection. It helps that the 2 of them have someone to play off each other like Copen and Lola, but her personality is only blustered by the fact that this is a more jokey tone in overall storytelling. The most interesting thing about her is that she doesn't kill her enemies, but that's set up by a starting level where she's investigating Sumeragi, a business partner where she can't kill anyone, and it just kinda keeps popping up sporadically in levels. Honestly, the first time through I thought she was at least killing the random mooks from the enemy country in the last half of the game. But as I said before, it mostly feels like a means to an end to fill out our home base of walking cliches. That also can be said for our rival harem of villainesses and their boss Zed. As for what this story is trying to say, it comes off kind of shallow the whole time. You have this organization, Shadow Yakumo, who literally comes out of nowhere saying that they are the ones who watch over Sumeragi and keep them in check. An organization that tried to put adepts, a minority, under a massive hypnotized slavery. The story then tries to sell us the fact that Sumeragi aren't all bad and they've changed because I don't know, they have an Amazon shipping plant, they removed fossil fuels for their country off the back of our imprisoned main character, once again helped cause our current issue in the first place. And then you have our antagonists, Atoms, who have absolutely nothing to add themselves other than, we will be the ones who will control everything because Sumeragi lied about having another world-ending monster. It's supposed to read as, if people work together, they'll eventually find the solution, but it comes off as, our problems will be solved one day. I don't know when, but maybe. They constantly talk about people being held responsible for their own actions, but just like real life, it's just a bunch of gaslighting and looking to the side for large corporations because they hold up our country's foundation. No one's responsible for anything, nothing changes, and if it did, the story doesn't have the decency to show us that without compromising itself. Again. And last but not least, this game completely throws away the secret ending of the last game. If you're the type of person that cares about some production info or behind the scene aspects, you might be able to connect certain little plot points or character details from the previous games to this one, but the fact that they can't put all of that out in the open is a crime in and of itself. If you're just going to throw away the secret ending of the last game, why should I care about anything that happens now? You can have a self-contained story and change the overarching plot as much as you want, but that takes a lot more detail and care than this game's writer cares to put in. The only real connection to the secret ending in the last game is a joke ending for beating the game on the hardest mode in this one. And honestly, that rubs me the wrong way. I've always said that I don't really care for these games' story, but that doesn't mean that they aren't super close to getting me to care. But after this, nah, it's over. If these games continue, it's 100% just gameplay. And speaking of gameplay, it threw away Gunvolt just like the story did. As I said before, he's pretty much a win button, a crutch to overcome the level design. It's not that bad of a mechanic because Gunvolt still has to worry about stays, hazards, and power usage. He takes damage, and even reckless attacking takes time away from your transformation. For all of that freedom, you still have to be cautious. The only problem is that it practically eradicated his gameplay style. These games are still point-based games at heart, but you won't be playing that way with Gunvolt. Gunvolt still gains points as he plays, but he's too strong so he hardly racks up anything. And the enemies are too spaced out for his normal playstyle to actually work, and his darts has been reduced to 3, so you can't even rack up a good bonus in the first place. At best, with the right image pulses, he just becomes a fun time attack style mode, and the game even recognizes that, but it feels a bit too far off from where we were before. The best way to play him is playing just like Kirin, and that's kind of boring. However, this game's saving grace is that Kirin is extremely fun to play as. She's basically everything I wanted Copen to be in X2, and it's helped by the special abilities she gains from fighting the bosses. Her stage play, however, at least for points, is managing to stay in the air as long as you can, racking up arc chains as far as you can. As compared to before, she attacks from a distance like Gunvolt, but her rhythm and movement is closer to Copen's. She's a bit more difficult to handle than him, but the game is generous in its score multipliers. This can be tracked by the idle songs that play on a timer this time around. The higher your chain combo, the more songs that will play, and the overlay will get fancier with higher song chaining. All that being said, this game handles score completely differently from the past games. No matter what difficulty you're playing on, you don't lose it by the number of times you're hit or for running into a checkpoint. When you take damage, your score becomes locked and you need to get more points to unlock it, and you rack up more points to your lock as you continue to take damage. This makes runs in this game less stressful and allows for more mistakes, but rewards consistency better than before and eases you into that pure perfection play. By the way, to get those harder difficulty levels, you just need to beat the main game. You get 2 extra difficulties like in the past games: demanding tasks, which lower your HP and change up boss attacks, and merciless tasks, which also locks you out of passive image pulses. You can still use your active ones, but they are limited to a single use per level. Anthem and checkpoints still work, so you can pretty much brute force your way through it till the end. Or at least until the final boss. As long as it's better than X2, it's good by me. These extra tasks also change up the image pulses you can get in the levels and gives you a guaranteed pull on your first completion. Speaking of image pulses, it's probably their best system yet, but it's still RNG based and the money situation is only slightly better. There isn't an image pulse that I feel that you would need in this game like Gunvolt 1 and 2, or X2 for that matter, but it does make getting the ones that you would want a bit more difficult than need be. It tells you which ones are in which level, but it's still RNG based, so who knows how many runs you need to do. And as stated before, you level them up with money, but with how this game is played, you're hardly ever touching the ground where it is. Why did they make automatically grabbing money in image pulls? That's a waste of a slot. And on the subject, I would have liked it if the game allowed us to make multiple custom layouts. I'd have liked at least 3 myself, one for grinding, one for score rankings, and one for boss fights. It's saving grace is that you can switch between them on the fly during gameplay, so it is nice if only a bit cumbersome. Now we can get onto the presentation and the game's overall aesthetic. I think these games keep looking better and better. I praise the X games on their background elements, but this time they really stepped up the game with their foreground as well. The water in the forge facility really stood out to me, or how some of the enemies break off into the foreground. It's nice to be in the futuristic cityscape again, and the level variety this time around is pretty nice, even if it gets a bit samey near the end. But the actual level design of enemies and hazards and how they mix them up from all of the previous levels beforehand really spices it up a bit. I was going to complain about a desert just being there, but then I found out about the Totori Desert. Not a real desert in Japan, and I don't even know if it was an inspiration, but I found out a fun fact, so that's good enough for me. The soundtrack is once again excellent with more idle songs for your listening pleasure, and they swap out every 1,000 kudos this time if you keep your score up. Honestly, to wrap everything up, as an overall package, I'd say that this may be my favorite game in the series in terms of how the game is designed. I do enjoy Ix's more streamlined approach that makes going for medals worth it, as compared to this game where tokens stop mattering the more you level up the pulses that you want. But there is something nice about having an actual difficulty slider to your health more than just focusing on score, but that's just a preference. I think this game is the best in the series at letting you play how you want to. The image pulse system with its active and passive abilities really blow everything else out of the water. As stated before, I can focus on score, attack, defense, or my personal favorite, style. And that can range for altered movement or just letting the music rock longer than normal. My only major complaint is that Gunvolt really isn't present in this game titled Gunvolt 3. I never switched to him if I didn't have to, and that only happened when I unlocked the harder modes or was in a boss fight. You know, as mentioned before, for style. But Kirin is so fun and has a playstyle I enjoy so much that I'm okay with it. But that doesn't really excuse what happened to our titular character, who's been benched for 6 years now? I don't really know what they'll do next with Gunvolt, if at all, but they ended it with the door wide open for anything to happen. Well, anything except for tying it back to the ending of Gunvolt 2, but who knows, this series now plays with the idea of alternate timelines in the main and spin-off canon, so who am I to say? But at the end of it all I can say is that if you've enjoyed Gunvolt up until now, you'll probably enjoy this game, maybe? Heck, if you've hated Gunvolt up until now, you still might enjoy it, so what do you say? Give it a shot. But don't expect a good story, I'm never letting that go. Until we meet again, mata ao until we meet again.